As the sun rose on Easter Sunday, the city was in chaos. The streets were littered with debris, and the air was thick with the scent of blood and fear. The monster, a creature that looked like an oversized Easter egg, had escaped from the lab and was wreaking havoc on the city. The scientist who had created the monster was horrified by what had happened. He had thought that he had designed the perfect creature, one that would bring joy and wonder to the world. Instead, he had created a monster that was devouring everything in its path. The authorities tried to contain the monster, but it was too fast and too powerful. It moved through the city like a silent predator, leaving destruction and death in its wake. People were too scared to leave their homes, and the city ground to a halt. As the days turned into weeks, the situation grew more desperate. The monster had taken over entire neighborhoods, and the authorities were at a loss for how to stop it. The scientist who had created the monster knew that he had to do something to fix his mistake. He worked tirelessly, poring over his notes and experimenting with different chemicals and compounds. He was determined to find a way to stop the monster before it destroyed everything in its path. Finally, after weeks of work, the scientist discovered a way to defeat the monster. He developed a chemical that would dissolve the monster's outer shell, leaving it vulnerable to attack. The authorities were skeptical, but they had no other options. They sprayed the chemical over the city, and the monster's shell dissolved before their eyes. The creature was left helpless and vulnerable, and the authorities were able to capture it. The city slowly returned to normal, and the scientist was hailed as a hero for his bravery and ingenuity. But he knew that he would never forget the terrible mistake he had made. He had created a monster, one that had terrorized the city and left a trail of destruction and death in its wake. And he knew that he would carry that guilt with him for the rest of his life. Excited for an Easter egg hunt in the woods, a group of friends set out on a sunny day. They wandered around, looking for hidden eggs, and stumbled upon an old, abandoned house. Curiosity piqued, they decided to explore it. The house was old, and it was clear that no one had lived there for years. As they moved from room to room, they noticed that the house was filled with dust and cobwebs. One of the rooms was locked, and they decided to see what was inside. After some effort, they finally managed to force the door open. To their amazement, they found a room filled with Easter eggs, all painted in bright colors. The eggs looked like they had been left there for years, but they were still in good condition. Excited to have found so many eggs, the friends began to pick them up. But as soon as they touched the eggs, they heard eerie whispers and felt cold hands on their necks. They tried to ignore it and continued to gather the eggs, but the whispers grew louder, and the hands grew colder. Suddenly, the room began to shake, and the eggs on the shelves started to rattle. Terrified, the friends ran out of the house as fast as they could. But the ghosts of the former owners followed them, haunting them for the rest of their lives. From that day on, the friends were never the same. They were always haunted by the feeling of cold hands on their necks, and the sound of whispers that seemed to follow them wherever they went. Some even claimed to have seen the ghostly figures of the former owners lurking in the shadows, watching them. The legend of the haunted Easter egg house became well known in the town, and people avoided the woods at all costs. The old house remained abandoned, and no one dared to venture near it again. The group of friends learned a valuable lesson that day: some things are better left untouched, and some places are better left unexplored. In a small town, a man dressed up as the Easter Bunny to entertain children at a party. However, this man was actually a convicted criminal who had escaped from prison. He had a history of violence and was known to be mentally unstable. As the party progressed, the Easter Bunny started to act strangely. He became aggressive, lashing out at the children and their parents. Before anyone could react, he pulled out a weapon and began to attack. The Easter Bunny killed all the children and their parents, leaving behind a gruesome scene of carnage. The police were called, but the Easter Bunny had disappeared into the night. In the weeks that followed, people reported hearing strange noises coming from the scene of the massacre. Some claimed to hear the sound of the Easter Bunny's laughter, while others reported hearing the screams of terror from the victims. Despite an extensive search, the Easter Bunny was never found. Some people believe that he is still out there, hiding in the shadows, waiting to strike again. Others believe that he may have taken his own life after committing such a heinous act. Whatever the truth may be, the legend of the Easter Bunny's revenge lives on. Parents warn their children not to trust strangers, and the memory of that terrible night continues to haunt the town to this day. Legend has it that in a small town a long time ago, a family angered the Easter Bunny by doing something that displeased him. The exact nature of their offense was lost to time, but the consequences were not. The Easter Bunny cursed the family, and from then on, strange things began to happen every Easter. On the night of every Easter, the family would hear strange noises outside their window. It sounded like scratching, as if some kind of creature was trying to claw its way into the house. They would also see a shadowy figure lurking outside, watching them from the darkness. The family tried to ignore these strange occurrences and convinced themselves that it was just their imagination. However, on the last Easter before the youngest daughter was due to move away, things took a turn for the worse. The family woke up to find the youngest daughter's room covered in blood and claw marks. The girl was nowhere to be found, and the family assumed the worst. They searched the house and the surrounding area but found no trace of her. The family was grief-stricken and knew that the curse had finally caught up with them. They never spoke of the curse again, and the family never fully recovered from the tragedy. As the years went by, the legend of the cursed family spread throughout the town. People would tell the story of the Easter Bunny's curse to scare their children into behaving. Some even claimed to have seen the shadowy figure lurking outside the cursed family's old house on Easter night. Whether the story is true or not, the curse of the Easter Bunny has become a cautionary tale to be told for generations to come. The family couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them after opening the cursed Easter egg. They tried to ignore the ghostly presence, but it only grew stronger, tormenting them day and night. The figure would move objects around the house, causing a sense of unease in the family. They could hear eerie whispers in their ears, but could never quite make out what the ghost was saying. It seemed to feed off their fear and grew more powerful with each passing day. The family tried everything to rid themselves of the cursed Easter egg. They buried it, burned it, and even threw it in the river, but nothing worked. The ghostly figure continued to haunt them relentlessly. One day, the family decided to seek the help of a spiritual medium. The medium listened to their story and nodded gravely. She explained that the Easter egg had been cursed by an ancient spirit and that it would take a powerful ritual to break the curse. The family agreed to the ritual and the medium performed it with great care. As she chanted and sprinkled holy water around the house, the ghostly figure began to fade away. Finally, after weeks of terror, the family was free from the curse. The family never forgot the horror they had experienced, and they warned others to be wary of any strange Easter eggs that might come their way. But even as the years passed, they could never quite shake off the feeling that something was still watching them from the shadows. The family had been excited to move into their new home. They had been looking for a bigger house for some time, and this one seemed perfect. It was spacious, with a large backyard and plenty of room for their children to play. However, their excitement quickly turned to terror when they discovered the secret room. The room was hidden behind a bookcase in the study, and it was completely empty except for an old diary. The diary belonged to the previous owner, and as they read it, the family realized that they had made a terrible mistake. The previous owner had been a kind and loving father, but on Easter Sunday, he had suddenly become possessed by the spirit of the Easter Bunny. He had gone on a killing spree, murdering his entire family in cold blood. The family was horrified by what they read, and they immediately knew that they had to leave the house. They packed up their belongings and left the house that same day, never looking back. But the memories of what they had uncovered haunted them for years to come. They couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them, and they often heard strange noises coming from their new home. They tried to forget the horrors of the past, but they knew that they would never be able to erase them completely. Years later, the family returned to the house to try and lay their fears to rest. They had hoped that time had healed their wounds, but as they stepped inside the old home, they knew that they were wrong. The memories of what had happened in the secret room came flooding back, and they knew that they could never truly escape the horrors of the past. The legend of the Easter Bunny's possession of the previous owner lived on in the town, and people spoke of it in hushed whispers. The house remained abandoned, a silent reminder of the horrors that had occurred within its walls. And the family who had uncovered its secrets never forgot the terrible price they had paid for their curiosity. The girl's parents were devastated when they realized that their daughter was missing. They searched for her tirelessly, but no trace of her could be found. As time passed, the memory of the strange figures that had been following their daughter began to haunt them, filling them with a sense of dread. Rumors began to spread throughout the town about the girl's disappearance. Some said that she had been kidnapped by a mysterious cult that worshipped the Easter Bunny, while others claimed that she had been taken by the spirit of the holiday itself. Years went by, and the girl's parents never gave up hope of finding their daughter. They searched tirelessly, following every lead that came their way. But as time passed, their hope began to fade, and they were left with nothing but their grief and the haunting memory of the shadowy figure that had taken their daughter away. On Easter Sunday, every year, the town would hold a vigil for the missing girl, lighting candles and saying prayers in the hope that she would one day return. But as the years went by, the vigil became more and more somber, a reminder of the loss that had never been healed. And though the town had long forgotten the strange figure that had once haunted their streets, the memory of the missing girl and the unanswered questions surrounding her disappearance remained, a chilling reminder of the dark side of the Easter holiday. The news of the tragic event on Easter Island quickly spread around the world, and soon, rumors started to surface about the cursed tablet. Many people believed that the earthquake was caused by the curse, and that it was a warning to future generations not to disturb the ancient artifacts. Despite the warnings, some archaeologists and treasure hunters were not deterred. They continued to come to Easter Island, hoping to uncover more secrets and hidden treasures. However, they soon discovered that the island was not safe. Strange things started to happen to those who ignored the warnings. They would experience strange visions and hear voices in their heads. Some claimed to have seen shadowy figures lurking in the corners of their rooms, while others reported being attacked by unseen forces. Over time, it became clear that the curse was real, and that those who disturbed the ancient artifacts were being punished. The island was soon abandoned, and the giant stone heads that had once stood tall were left to crumble and decay. Today, Easter Island is a quiet and remote place, visited only by a few tourists and researchers. The islanders who live there warn outsiders not to disturb the ancient artifacts and to respect the island's history. They believe that the curse still lingers on the island, waiting to strike anyone who dares to defy it. The legend of the Easter Island curse serves as a cautionary tale to those who seek to uncover the secrets of the past. It reminds us that some things are better left undisturbed, and that the consequences of our actions can be far-reaching and unpredictable. The police were horrified when they discovered the extent of the cult's crimes. The members had been sacrificing innocent people to their beloved Easter eggs for years, and the giant eggs that had once been a symbol of joy and celebration were now stained with the blood of the innocent. As the cult members were taken into custody, the police uncovered more and more evidence of their crimes. They found hidden rooms filled with gruesome artifacts and symbols of their twisted beliefs. The survivors of the cult's attacks were left traumatized and scarred, struggling to come to terms with the horror that they had experienced. The families of the victims were left to grieve for their loved ones, their lives forever shattered by the senseless violence. The trial was a long and grueling process, as the cult members refused to show any remorse for their actions. They continued to espouse their twisted beliefs, insisting that their sacrifices had been necessary to achieve eternal life. In the end, the cult members were all found guilty of their crimes and sentenced to life in prison. But for the survivors and families of the victims, the scars of the cult's atrocities would never truly heal. And as Easter approached each year, they couldn't help but feel a sense of dread, knowing that the holiday that had once been a time of joy and celebration would forever be tainted by the memory of the cult and their twisted beliefs. The survivors knew they had to come up with a plan to defeat the Easter Bunny's army of evil rabbits. They quickly realized that the rabbits were immune to most weapons, and that their sharp teeth and claws made them deadly opponents. But the survivors were determined not to give up. One of the survivors, a former soldier, came up with a plan. He knew that the Easter Bunny's army was controlled by a single, powerful rabbit, the Bunny King. If they could find and defeat the Bunny King, the rest of the army would fall. The survivors set out on a dangerous mission to find the Bunny King's lair. They fought their way through hordes of evil rabbits, using everything from guns to makeshift weapons, and finally reached the lair. There, they found the Bunny King, a massive and terrifying creature, surrounded by his most loyal followers. The survivors fought with all their might, but the Bunny King was too strong for them. Just when all hope seemed lost, one of the survivors, a young girl, had an idea. She remembered a story her grandmother had told her about a magical carrot that could control rabbits. The survivors searched the lair and finally found the carrot. They used it to lure the Bunny King into a trap, and with one swift blow, the Bunny King was defeated. The army of evil rabbits immediately stopped attacking and returned to their homes in the forests and fields. The survivors celebrated their victory, but they knew that they had to stay vigilant. For who knew what other threats lurked in the world, waiting to strike on the next Easter?